All eyes now on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with the US President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. And ahead of that big talk, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already given Pakistan a tough message. Now, anti-terror operations are expected to figure prominently in this bilateral meeting because Pakistan-sponsored terror is a threat not just to India, not just to Afghanistan and the US forces in Afghanistan, but to Europe and the United States of America.
The stage is set for the big Modi-Trump meeting today. The heads of the biggest and oldest democracies will meet for the first time. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump will spend nearly 5 hours getting to know each other in a bid to strengthen bilateral relations between India and the United States. The two leaders will first meet for one-on-one talks in the afternoon and will later head delegation-level talks.
In his first meeting with President Donald Trump, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will focus on economic, strategic and security issues. The focus particularly will be on terrorism emanating from Pakistan, as also the issue of H-1B visa review in the United States of America. President Trump has made it very clear for him the focus will continue to remain job creation in the United States of America. We will see whether if there is going to be a meeting ground between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the significant meeting on the 26th.
The talks between the two leaders would be broad-ranging and might prominently feature common issues such as counter-terrorism and defense partnership. And already Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spelled out the agenda of talks. Addressing the Indian diaspora on Sunday, Prime Minister Modi sent out a tough message to Pakistan on terrorism, making it clear that terror will be on top of agenda during his meeting with President Trump.
सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक एक ऐसी घटना थी, अगर दुनिया चाहती तो भारत के बाल नोच लेती, हमें कटघरे में खड़ी कर देती। विश्व हमारा जवाब मांगता, दुनिया में हमारी आलोचना होती। लेकिन पहली बार आप सबने अनुभव किया होगा, भारत के सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक के इतने बड़े कदम को विश्व में से किसी ने भी एक सवाल नहीं उठाया।
Though H-1B visa is not on the official agenda, India's sources say will raise its concerns.
So global security and regional security and these issues, terrorism, etc., I would say again, I don't want to constrain the agenda of the leaders, but it is logical to assume that these issues will figure in the discussions between the two leaders.
First, in the most significant meeting between India and the United States of America, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi would meet President Trump. All issues are on the table, while the focus for United States of America is going to be job creation and market growth. For India, there are concerns regarding H-1B visa which would be raised, but the strong and the most important area of concern for India is terrorism emanating from Pakistan, and that certainly will find a mention in the joint statement. With video journalist Ravi Kant in New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
So this is the Prime Minister's 5th visit to the United States of America. He'll be spending close to 5 hours with the US President Donald Trump. The two will get to know each other. The aim is to strengthen bilateral ties between India and the United States of America. The two leaders, they'll have a one-on-one this afternoon. That's afternoon US time. The two leaders will also have broad-ranging talks on common issues, counter-terrorism, India-US defense partnership. South China Sea controversy is also likely to be a part of the discussions. H-1B visas not on the official agenda of talks, but that's also likely to figure. Trump will be hosting a working dinner for Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House. This will be the first dinner for any foreign head of government or state at the White House ever since Donald Trump took over. So let's now focus on our top issues. I want to bring in Sushant Sareen. He's a strategic affairs analyst. He joins us on the broadcast. Rajiv Dogra is former ambassador to Italy, former consul general to Pakistan, joins us on the broadcast. We also have Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad, former Director General of Infantry, joining us on the broadcast. India Today's Geeta Mohan joins us live from the United States of America. Our top focus stories: will India and the US corner Pakistan on terror? Can India and the US come together to counter not just Pakistan but also China? But will India First policy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the America First policy of the US President Donald Trump, will they clash? Geeta joins us from Washington, D.C. Geeta, terrorism, is that top on the agenda, or military sales to India, is that top on the agenda? Take us through what's expected later today.
Well, it is going to be a significant meeting, but like everybody's saying, it is going to be an ice-breaking meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where both the leaders are going to talk about the issues, the concerns that both the countries have. But top of India's agenda is going to be terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Even today, when he was addressing the Indian community, and in that diaspora event, he made it very specific and very clear that terrorism and zero tolerance towards terrorism is something that India will continue to maintain as a matter of policy. And in that, after a long time, mentioned surgical strikes yet again, that the countries that support and abet terrorism emanating from a country and directed against India will not be tolerated, and there will be response. So a reference to Pakistan, and what we are given to understand from our sources is that there could be there would be reference to cross-border terrorism for India. That would mean Pakistan, and also a designation of a terrorist network. We are yet to confirm what the terror network is going to be, or which one, but certainly it could be one that impacts India, given that the United States of America has paid heed to the concerns India has when it comes to terrorism and the issue of security in the region. These are top areas, but for Donald Trump, the issues and the focus will be jobs and how to better the economy and boost the economy of the United States of America.
Okay. What does this actually mean practically on ground? I want to bring in Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Ambassador Dogra, please help us understand India, US together to counter Pakistan-sponsored terror. That's India's expectations. But what does it actually translate into on ground?
Well, I think first we must be quite clear that terror or Pakistan or anything else cannot be the sole issue between two leaders of such large countries as India and US. It is true that both US and India have suffered greatly and are suffering greatly from terrorism, but there are other issues as well which will complement the strength that these two democracies have. And I mean, from business relationships to industry to technology.
Sir, we'll talk about that during the course of the broadcast. I want to specifically focus on terror now. We'll talk about all other issues.
Coming back to terrorism, coming back to terrorism, I think the concept of American concern on terrorism is slightly different from Indian concern on terrorism. Trump is more focused on ISIS. Trump is more focused on Iran, and now he's got another issue on hand, partly of his own making, that is Qatar, which has been branded almost as a terrorist state by rest of its Gulf allies. So, Trump also has North Korea as an issue concerning terror and irresponsible state, whereas India has major issues with Pakistan. So, the entire idea of this meeting should be to use the opportunity of two developments which are taking place now in USA. One, a review of US's relationship with Pakistan, for which Trump has set up a special committee, and his report is expected shortly. Second, there is a joint bipartisan resolution in the Congress where questions have been asked as to why America should keep on supporting Pakistan in terms of military and economic aid. So that is a good opportunity for our Prime Minister to bring his concerns on the table and to point out how America itself is suffering from Pakistan's cross-border terrorism in Afghanistan.
And when you specifically spoke of the Islamic State, absolutely. So now you've hit the nail on its head. Sushant Sareen, when the US commander of Resolute Forces, General Nicholson, specifically spoke of the Islamic State. He said it's based out of Pakistan, in Pakistan, the Northwest Frontier Province. Afghanistan is suffering, US forces suffering, India suffering at the hands of Pakistan-sponsored terror. Yet, is there hope or scope of one strategy to deal with terror at its source?
See, that will depend entirely on what the American calculations are going to be. The problem for the Americans is really going to be that if they remain committed to Afghanistan, if they, as is being speculated, that there could be a surge of about another 5,000 odd troops, American troops in Afghanistan, then how do they turn the screws on Pakistan? Because after all the ground lines of communication and the air lines of communication run through Pakistan. They've virtually burned their bridges with the Russians. With the Iranians, there is absolutely no let-up in the hostility. So the sole route to Afghanistan remains through Pakistan. How do they provision their troops? So this is the the circle that will have to be squared before we can say that the Americans will be ready to really turn the screws on Pakistan. They might try and do it in some other ways, in slightly with some deflection. For example, on the Financial Action Task Force meeting, which is likely to come up in the next couple of days or weeks. So that could happen. That is but one part of it. The larger question is going to be what the American, how the American and Indian strategic, convergence is going to work out, because we were hopeful when President Trump had come into power that the Americans will, relook at their policy towards China. That clearly has not happened. The Americans will relook at their policy at Russia. That has also not happened. The fact that President Trump seemed to be a lot clearer about Islamist terrorism, especially emanating out of the Middle East, than his predecessor. But somehow he seems to have simply slipped back into the kind of mold which most other governments in the US have done over the last 15-20 years. So the kind of U-turns which have been made by the US president in recent months don't really cause a lot of enthusiasm as to what kind of, whether there will be any kind of clarity on the US policy specifically on terrorism. And it's quite right what Ambassador Dogra is saying, that see, America is a global power, so its concerns are going to range from North Korea to Iran to Timbuktu to whatever else. India is at best a regional power, and so our concerns will be regional. Now, is there going to be some kind of a strategic convergence out there? But given the fact that the American, at least the Trump administration, seems to be really getting very close to the Chinese, there are very serious question marks as to how far the Americans will go along with us, both on the eastern front as well as on our western front.
Oh, absolutely. And that is where, General Shankar Prasad, India will have to fight India's battles on our own, whether it's at the line of control or taking the battle into the enemy camp, defeating the terrorist sponsoring state at home, sir.
First of all, you made a very good remark just now. We have to sort out our own problems. If we think the Americans, the Russians or the Brits are going to solve our problem, they're not. We have to solve our own problem. That's point one. Point two, if you recall, Gaurav, in September the Prime Minister made one statement to say there is a tactical response to Pakistan and there is a strategic response. Strategic response is being developed by me. It's a long-term process. It will take a long time for strategic response to take shape. He has recently visited Russia, spoke about terrorism. He recently visited Germany, spoke about terrorism. He visited France, spoke about terrorism. He went to Portugal just now, spoke about terrorism. He is now in America talking about surgical strike and about terrorism. Terrorism is highest on his mind.
Yes.
Both these leaders have very much devoted to their own countries. Their own countries come first, always and every time. And therefore, and they are very well prepared for this meeting. Many people turned around and said that President Trump is a bit unpredictable. But in this 5-hour-long meeting, he is not perhaps not going to be unpredictable. He's very well planned, very well briefed, and very well prepared for this meeting. There are many issues to be discussed. There is terrorism, there is market access, there is agriculture, there is cyber warfare, there is Make in India, there is Make in America. I'm not going to go through that because you're basically focusing on terrorism. See, the point is this, that what is Prime Minister Narendra Modi trying to do across the globe? He's trying to create an impression in the world that we have been suffering terrorism for last over 2 decades and India cannot take it any longer and therefore needs to have a strategic response. And he thanked the world for not having any adverse comment on surgical strike. And now he's talking about assisting in creating a better capability within India, both strategically and tactically, both militarily and diplomatically, to counter and take our own actions as and when he is ready to do that. So for getting ready to do that,
that's a point you well make.
The heads of state from Russia to America.
Yes.
And in the case of America, we need a certain amount of strategic partnership. 2 more points.
So I'll come back to both those points. I have to take a quick break at this point. We'll also play out what the Prime Minister said, that when India carried out a surgical strike, he did not name Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, but he said when India carried out a surgical strike, the world understood India's concerns. But mere understanding our concerns, is that enough, or a more robust response from the world is also expected? That much more about whether it's H-1B visas or a clash on America first, India first, buy American, all of that coming up on the other side. Can India and the United States of America together counter Pakistan-sponsored terror, which is a threat not just to India but to this region? Now, before meeting the US President Donald Trump, the Prime Minister addressed a 700-strong Indian diaspora in the US. Let's listen in.
आज विश्व में किसी को टेररिज्म समझाना नहीं पड़ रहा है, टेररिस्टों ने समझा दिया है। हम समझाते थे, समझ नहीं आता था, टेररिस्टों ने समझा दिया है। लेकिन जब हिंदुस्तान सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक करता है, तब दुनिया को ताकत का अनुभव होता है कि भारत संयम रखता है, लेकिन जरूरत पड़े तो भारत अपने सामर्थ्य का परिचय भी।
And this is where, will there be convergence more than just words in terms of action? Ambassador Dogra, just a while back, Sushant Sareen was saying the US is likely to commit another 5,000 troops to Afghanistan. Their dependence on Pakistan land route or sea route for their replenishment, will that ensure that US does not take a hard line on Pakistan, or can Chabahar be an alternative route?
Well, I suspect what Sushant has said would come about, because America is far too dependent on its supply line through Pakistan to afford to annoy it beyond a point. So they would harden some of the terms of the engagement, but they will not snap them. As far as Chabahar is concerned, India should consider it only as a work in progress, because the port is not complete. It is not complete to the extent it should be. Even if it were complete, the fact is that the moment America decides to put more sanctions on Iran, India would have to reconsider its relationship with Iran, as it had done earlier in terms of sanctions. But much more important than that, even if Chabahar were fully functional, even if we had an entire sea passage to Chabahar and on to Afghanistan, the fact is that today Pakistan and China have Gwadar in full operation. Their submarines and warships are prowling around in the sea lanes around Gwadar. Whenever they want, they can snap our link, not just to Chabahar, but also our oil supplies from the Gulf. So for us, it's a much bigger concern protecting our trade and passage of our ships to and fro Middle East.
But Sushant Sareen, this is where we talk about, in case Chabahar comes up quicker, in case India does increase the pace of operations there, the US, China and Pakistan may try and stop Indian ships or other ships. They can't afford to stop US ships.
No, I don't think the Chinese and the Pakistanis can even afford to stop Indian ships. Let's not forget, the Indian landmass abuts into the Indian Ocean, and for whatever else, all this brouhaha about Gwadar does not serve China's oil interests or does not guarantee China's economic security or energy security. For that, the Chinese will continue to remain dependent on the Indian Ocean, and that's our little pond, come to think of it. So if the Chinese are going to block us near the Persian Gulf, then they have another thought coming of what will happen to their shipping, and a whole lot of it which passes very close to our sea lanes and sea lanes which we control. Remember, we have the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which give us a kind of a stranglehold over Malacca in a manner of speaking, or even over the other straits through which the Chinese trade flows. So I don't think the Chinese are going to be stupid enough to try and interdict our trade. The Pakistanis, of course, are stupid enough, and they could try something like this, but I think the Pakistanis don't have the naval muscle to pull that off. But Chabahar, from India's point of view, Ambassador Dogra is right, it's still a little premature. But even if it were to come about, it's of no use to the Americans, because until and unless the Americans are going to change their foreign policy and make up with Iran, the Iranians are not going to give them access into Afghanistan through their territory. And the Russian equation doesn't seem to be working out anyways. So I think that limits America's
dependence
options
on Pakistan
as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and also increases their dependence on Pakistan.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. A quick break. Now, both of you talked about China, and China is, we are told, is monitoring this Modi-Trump meeting very closely.